Alrighty, everybody. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Just a moment. Alrighty, everybody. So my name is Jen. I'm a paralegal at Lawyers for Civil Rights, and I'm very excited to have everybody joining me today. My presentation is going to start off, and we're going to be talking about the top 10 tips of undocumented immigrants post-arrival. Okay. So the agenda for today is basically focusing on understanding immigration proceedings, documents that immigrants might receive once they get into the United States. I'm also going to be talking about some know your rights, important rights that immigrants should know once they are in the US, and then some housing tips, how to handle a landlord, how to get emergency shelter, the RAFT application, and also some information about the Department of Housing and Community Development. So how to check your immigration proceedings online. So when someone enters the US through the border, the Department of Homeland Security provides a document called Notice to Appear. And this document has very important information regarding one's immigration court date, their location, and their alien number, which is also an A number, and also the date of their arrival. And again, the alien number is very important, or the A number, because it's the way that the US keeps records on undocumented people once they're inside the US. So right here is the document for Notice to Appear. This document is really essential to inform for immigrants because it has a lot of important information, and sometimes it's very confusing and people don't really know exactly what is on it. But again, so on the top right corner, there's the file number, which is your A number. And then on the left-hand side, I put here that there is the arrival date and the location of where the immigrant arrived. And then below here is where the court date and the location of one's court date is. And then I just wanted to go over a little bit about the two different types of hearings that one might have to go attend. And these hearings are usually with the immigration court. The first one is the master calendar hearing, which is like a pretrial conference for one's immigration proceedings. And this is the type of master hearing that you do not need to present with an attorney. Most of the questions asked during this hearing are very basic, like your name and when you came to the US. And they're not questions that need to be answered with an attorney present. And then the individual hearing is a little bit different, and it's the second type of hearing that an undocumented person might have to do. And in this hearing, it's called the individual hearing, and this is one that an attorney has to be present. There will be questions that are asked that the attorney should prepare with the client. So we want to make sure that the person is informed that they have to have an attorney present. And then I just wanted to give a little bit of information about how to check your court hearing online. There is an immigration court website, and I have it here highlighted in blue. And so basically, when you open up this site, you'll see on the left, it'll come out saying automatic case information, and that's where you would plug in one's A number. And once you plug it in, most of the time, it'll show up on the site with their hearing, the type of hearing they have, who their judge is, and the location of their court. Sometimes it might not be up to date, which is also important why I put the link below as well for the EOIR website. And this is where you can find the immigration court for that certain person. And it'll have the phone number too, where you can call them and get a clearer and better understanding of when your court date, and to make sure that it is the correct court date. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about the ICE check-in form as well. This form is called the G56, and it is given by Department of Homeland Security, and it's an ICE check-in. This type of check-in is different than a court hearing. This check-in is just with ICE, and the form looks like this on the left. And so basically, it will say the location and the address and the appointment for that person. And then below here, I've also added the ICE website. So you can, in case one person is not able to attend their hearing, they can go on the website too and reschedule it. It's important that you do this because ICE is always trying to make sure that they have the person's correct address in case they have to send any type of documentation to you and to inform you anything. The next form that I want to talk about is the change of address form. It's very important that every person who has an immigration hearing or has an immigration proceeding with the court has the correct address. And so this is what the document looks like on the left. And I have added also the links for the EOIR website, where you can find the immigration court location. Say if one person moves from one location to the other, most of the time, people who are arriving to the US give one certain address, and it's not the one that they end up permanently living in. So you want to make sure that you're always putting the correct address and making sure that you're sending this to ICE and to the immigration court. And next is the change of revenue. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that change of venue and the change of address are two different types of processes. The process with motion to change venue is when you change your court. And this means that, say you move from one state to the other, and you are not able to attend your court hearing with the immigration court in the previous location, you must change it to a new immigration court. And this one has to be done with an attorney. This motion has to be sent to ICE and then also to the immigration court. And you also have to make sure that you have a copy for yourself as well, just for your own records and to make sure that the court has received your change of venue. And then for Know Your Rights, these are some information that is very important for undocumented people when they arrive to the US. You want to make sure that if you have an interaction with the police, that you have the right to remain silent, and you can ask for an interpreter, and you can ask also to speak with an attorney, and you can ask if someone is knocking at your door if they have a warrant to come into your home. It's very important that people know these rights, just because sometimes, since they don't know them, they might be taken advantage of. And it's very important that us as legal services or paralegals or people working with the community on the ground are informing them that they have these certain privileges that they can have while interacting with ICE. And again, always make sure to inform your client or a person that you're working with that is undocumented that they should carry their immigration documents, a copy, not usually the current one, but to always carry a copy is very important just in case ICE stops you. And then I also have some housing tips for tenants, especially. Sometimes undocumented people don't know certain rights that they have here, especially with housing. And I always try to express to my clients the importance of having a lease, having a signed lease, because it can help you with advantages in the future, to help with assistance from housing, and also because a landlord is not allowed to remove someone from their home without an eviction notice. An eviction notice is very essential to have from a court, and the court is the only people that can issue your eviction notice. And again, a notice to quit is not an eviction notice. It's the initiation of an eviction process. And then I also have some emergency housing locations in Massachusetts. Sometimes if someone is not able to find a home or they don't have a family member they can go to, I have listed on the right some local Massachusetts emergency shelters with the dates that they're open and when people and how many guests each location allows a day. And then I also had mentioned before the importance of having a lease agreement because, say, for example, in the future, one person is not able to pay for their rent, they can use this RAFT program to apply for assistance with rent. And one of the qualifications that you will need as a document is a lease agreement. So it's very important to also express that someone needs to always have a lease agreement. And I have also added the link for the application here on the bottom right. And then for the Department of Housing, Community and Development, I wanted to add this to my presentation because it's a really good source for housing. The link below that I have added is to locate resources in your local area. So once you open the site, it will ask you where you are living, what state and what city, and they will help you find emergency housing or help you find the housing authority location near you so that you can apply for housing assistance like RAFT or any other type of assistance that you need. And this is my contact information. If you have any questions for me, you can email me at this email. And that's it for my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, there's one right there.
Oh,
Sure.
go ahead. Do you know if there is any free legal aid services for immigrants in Western Massachusetts? So I don't specifically know one that's in Western Massachusetts, but if you would like to email me, I can always help locate some organizations in Western Massachusetts. But I do know that in immigration court, they have a help desk called the Catholic Charities, where they work on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And they have assistance with any type of immigration court hearing that you have as well.
Okay, and I think Carmen had if I can get, see if I can unmute her.
Hi, how are you,
Yeah, okay,
John?
hear you.
So I have a question. So are undocumented people able to actually apply for DHCD and other state governmental programs?
So it really depends on the type of organization, but I do know, for example, for RAFT, which is a direct assistance from DHCD, you can apply for RAFT, which is rental assistance, and you don't have to have status here in the US. You can be undocumented, you just need to have a photo ID. So it can be like a passport. Do you know if undocumented adults can apply for public housing, even if their children are not citizens? Again, you can apply for assistance if you have photo ID. Again, there is different types of qualifications for different assistances, but I know RAFT specifically, you do not have to have any type of status. It can be any type of ID. So I see that Carmen has asked, could it be any type of ID or does it have to be a photo ID with a US form? No, it doesn't have to be US IDs. It just has to be a photo ID. So it could be like a passport. I've helped people previously with a Brazilian passport apply for RAFT, and they've successfully received RAFT for 3 months in advance. Anybody else have any questions? I'm happy to answer.
I think this is one of these workshops where the basics are fairly straightforward, but in the implementation is a nightmare. And so that each case is very specific. Anyone else? Can an undocumented adult apply for Section 8?
Yes, they can apply for Section 8. And I would always recommend going to your local housing authority to get more information as well. If you go on that DHCD website that I had provided in my presentation, they will give you the specific organizations that are working in your local area as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think particularly in terms of, in Massachusetts, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically there are, and some other states have similar regulations. I know Connecticut does, for example, about source of income, but essentially if you have, again, there's protections against being discriminated against based upon the fact that you might have a rental subsidy. And again, that doesn't apply everywhere, but at least here it does.
Yes.
Any other questions at all? Anyone want to ask? Let's see. Yes, could you put in links to, again, we have recorded this workshop so that in about 2 weeks, it will be available on the fhcrconference.com, our Fair Housing Civil Rights Conference website, under resources, so that you could look for it then.
I think I might be able to plug in a PDF version of my presentation.
That would be great if you'd like, and if you will send that to us, we definitely would add that as well.
Let me see if I can do it really quickly. Apologize, give me 1 second.
There's a question about sharing the link to the presentation that has not yet been addressed.
Yeah, actually, you're muted.
You seem to be muted.
You're staying muted. Let's unmute you. You should be unmuted technically.
Yeah, it says
Oh,
I'm
there.
unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Oh, apologies, everybody. Yeah, I can. So I can't send my PDF of my presentation on the chat. It's not allowing me, but I
Okay,
can
so
always email it to the.
email it to jfisher@wayfinders.org. And again, in about a couple of weeks, it should be up available under resources on the conference website.
Okay, yeah, I will definitely do that. I'll be happy to do that for everybody to have all the links in my presentation. It'll be like helpful too, because I have the little explanations. And then Natalie had asked a question.
Another question, yes. If undocumented immigrants are turned away from a public housing authority because they don't have a US ID, and they report it.
Yes, so they can actually directly report it to the housing authority themselves. I'm not entirely sure how it works for every housing authority, but on the website, they should be able to report it as like a claim.
I also may caution because I'm among things a hearing officer for my agency and occasionally for some other agencies as well. And sometimes, particularly with Section 8, there are a lot of rights that are protected in terms of both in terms of rejecting somebody arbitrarily and in terms of terminating their assistance. And they aren't always well understood when they are appealed. So that sometimes it is well worth getting legal assistance if necessary, to sort of be aware of that, because I see a lot of times people will essentially, lose their housing or lose their chance at housing because somebody really didn't understand what the requirements were and thought that this was, in quotes, the rule of the housing authority. And it might be a prohibited act.
Yes, I completely agree. It's always very helpful to use local legal services to apply for housing, just because also sometimes it might be difficult application and you want to make sure that all the parts are being added. And sometimes some people might miss something that might be important information. So I do agree as well.
Also, these agencies should have a language access plan, which
Yes.
really deals with the fact of providing services to somebody if their primary language isn't English. And that really can be tricky sometimes because they might be, let's say, fluent enough to be able to conduct normal business in English, but may not always be able to have proper understanding or access to some of these documents that are thrown at them. So again, if they need help on a linguistic basis, that is supposed to be provided for them.
Absolutely. You can, I always say to my clients to always ask for an interpreter. And for example, I speak a second language, I speak Portuguese, and a lot of my clients sometimes who speak Portuguese, they'll be handed a Spanish interpreter. And I always say, no, you demand your Portuguese interpreter, because Portuguese and Spanish are very different languages and there's different dialects. So you have to make sure that you have an interpreter that speaks your specific language.
Mhm. Okay, other questions? Anybody? Okay, well,
There's
again,
one new statement in the chat.
one more, where's that?
I thought that undocumented immigrants are only eligible in households where someone in the family
Oh, good. Yeah.
family member of the US or an LPR or have both status. Yeah. So that actually is not true. And I think that's why a lot of people are afraid to apply sometimes, because they think that you have to have some type of status here. But for housing, like I said, RAFT, you don't have to have status here. And it's a way to protect people from homelessness.
Yeah. All right, anyone else?
Yeah, and again, the information I'm mentioning is specifically for Massachusetts.
Yeah. However, again, depending upon the state you're in, a number of states have very similar protections. And unfortunately, since we're dealing with the country, a number of them do not. So that, and of course, anybody who's in questionable status is going to be very, very, let's say, uncomfortable even risking asking questions. So that this is where, those of us who work around fair housing, civil rights issues can be really very helpful in kind of knowing what can and can't be done in our particular state. Yeah, although in technicality, mass technicality, RAFT is not technically a housing program. However, it is funds, and this is something one can argue. Again, it depends upon your state or what have you. Massachusetts talks about subsidies, for example, which could be argued to be a number of things. Certainly something like home base, which is a time-limited subsidy, or a Section 8 Massachusetts rental voucher program. Connecticut, I believe, talks about source of income, which is essentially trying to do the same thing. So you really have to put the pieces together.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much, Jennifer Cardoza, for coming here and doing this. This is a little gem of reference that, again, we will have on our website. People should be aware of, because regardless of whether you're working directly with immigrant populations or not, you are going to come into contact with them. And so you really people should be aware of their rights, because if they don't do things properly, it can have very severe consequences for them and for their families. And again, I just want to thank everybody. This is the last workshop of this year's Fair Housing and Civil Rights 2023 conference. Again, on our website, fhcrconference.com, about 2 weeks, we should have this presentation up, and hopefully the slides as well. And along with a number of other things. And over the year, if something comes up that's really pressing and important, we sometimes do special workshops in between. But in any event, if not, I hope to see all of you in 2024 at, again, what I hope is then going to be both an in-person and online conference, so that everybody should be able to have access to it. Thank you, everybody. And again, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it so much. Thank you.